Each and every champion in the League of Legends is not just a set of abilities, but also a part of a huge world full of history, intrigue and contradictions. In this video, we rank the characters from Piltover Zaun according to how good their story is. What criteria do we take into account? Influence on the world of League of Legends. How important the champion's story is to the global plot of Runeterra. Interaction with other champions. Relationships with other champions and how these connections affect the story. Breadth and depth of the lore. How well the hero's personality is revealed, as well as the details of their past and present. Based on these criteria, I divided the characters into tiers from D to S+. It is important to remember that this is a subjective ranking, and if your favorite character is in a low tier, do not be offended. If you guys don't agree with my ranking, be sure to share your opinion in the comments. I'll be happy to discuss your points of view. And the first one to open the list, falling into D tier, that is minimum level of lore curiosity, so to say, is Heimerdinger. Professor Cecil B. Heimerdinger is one of Piltover's most prominent scientists and a representative of the Yordles. He is renowned for his pioneering inventions and passion for progress. Well, and that is basically it. His lore literally amounts to a few sentences. Hence, Heimerdinger neither exerts a notable impact on Runeterra's global storyline, nor has deep links to other champions. For instance, his tie to Ziggs is confirmed in the comic, but even there he shows up on only a few pages, as the comic mainly centers on Jinx and Ziggs. Consequently, Heimerdinger's identity remains only superficially explored, and Twitch has a similar problem with his lore. The poor rat never even received a dedicated story from the developers. And that's all we really know about him. Twitch is a mutated plague rat, armed with a crossbow loaded with poisonous bolts. He constructs an empire of filth in the Zaun junkyard and hatches insidious plans to wipe out humanity. Zac, by comparison, does have at least some backstory, unlike the lowest ranked characters, and that nudges him up to C tier. Zac was created by a chemist as a synthetic life form for military use. His sludge-based body reacted to emotions, but after escaping he found refuge with a couple of alchemists who taught him to value life. When they were killed by the minions of Zac's creator, he slew the murderers and demolished numerous buildings in a fit of rage. But later his remorse led him to repair the damage. Now he dwells in Zaun's pipeworks, becoming an urban legend. His placement in C tier is warranted because Zac's influence is mainly local, restricted to Zaun and mostly known through rumors. He is not crucial to Runeterra at large, nor does he have strong connections with other champions, which cements his position. Next up is Seraphine. Seraphine has been enchanted by music since childhood, which served as a solace after her mother left the family. Her magical talent was so great that her father invented special hearing aids to help her control it. She began her career performing in Zaun, captivating crowds with her music. Why is she in C tier? Her lore focuses on personal experiences in music with minimal impact on the overall League of Legends setting, despite being able to understand the language of the Brackern, that is Connor. She has never actually spoken with him. Other ties, like with Caitlyn, only amount to Caitlyn admiring Seraphine's singing. Another factor in her C tier is that while her KDA universe storyline is pretty cool, her main Runeterra backstory is rather dull and unremarkable. Moving on, we have Dr. Mundo. He was once a quote-unquote chamber overseer, but after a mistake that infuriated his boss, he got shipped off to Oswald Hospital, where gruesome experiments were carried out on him. These experiments endowed him with formidable strength but severely damaged his mind and memories. He constructed his own reality, becoming a, so to say, doctor who quote-unquote treats patients by killing them. Just like Seraphine or Zac, Dr. Mundo does not affect Runeterra's overarching story. He basically acts on his own. The only real interaction he has is with Ekko, limited to a single conflict in which Dr. Mundo tried to capture Ekko, viewing him as just another patient. Interestingly, Dr. Mundo's lore mentions a mystery chemical that could have tied him to Shimmer from Arcane, yet it never did. The substance goes unnamed and is likely just a random detail that has no grand significance. Now we ascend to Tier B, populated by champions with entertaining mid-level stories whose lore weaves in with other champions and helps shape events in the universe. The first champion here is Janna. She is a wind spirit deity from pre-imperial Shurima whose power hinges on her devotees' faith. She belongs in B tier thanks to her lofty background, her divine origins, and her commitment to safeguarding people, particularly in Zaun. Plus, her ability to intervene in bigger happenings like halting cataclysmic floods makes her a global figure in League of Legends. Janna symbolizes the bridge between the divine and the mundane, and her influence spans beyond a single region, touching countless lives. Still, her limited extra stories keep her from rising any higher. Next is Void. He's a monster fashioned by Singit out of a gangster who was chemically modified into a beast. He lands in B tier thanks to his tragic backstory and to his bond with Singit. As for other ties, though he barely remembers his human past, he sometimes recalls a little girl's screams, presumably Jinx.
You were there. Let me forget.
He also recognizes Vi from before she switched to Piltover side.
Zaun needed you.
In essence, second season arcane lore clarifies that Warwick used to be Vander, Vi and Jinx's adoptive father. Nevertheless, his influence remains confined to Zaun, offering little impact on the larger narrative of Runeterra. This restricts him from advancing beyond B tier. Up next is Blitzcrank. This one is a mechanical golem built to handle toxic waste with an evolved self-awareness and started acting as Zaun's protector. Blitzcrank is benevolent and eager to help, although his bluntness can lead to chaos. In terms of connections, he's run into Zary a few times and the lore still lists Victor as his creator. However, the new Victor lore rooted in Arcane omits Blitzcrank, which creates a discrepancy. His original story no longer aligns with Victor's newly revised origins. Despite Blitzcrank's crucial role in responding to Zaun's ecological catastrophes, his storyline needs an update. A deeper link to the new Victor lore could enhance his significance, but until that happens, these quote-unquote blank spaces keep him from ranking any higher. Next, we have Oriana. We'll learn from Season 2 of Arcane that Oriana's father is Singit, tying her in more firmly with other League of Legends characters and renewing her background. She grew up in Piltover, aiding her father in building mechanical prosthetics. Her dream of traveling met a tragic twist. After heading to Zaun to help victims, Oriana got sick from toxic fumes. Father replaced her damaged organs with mechanical parts until she morphed into a living machine, losing both her memories and humanity. Years on, she gave up her heart to save her father, sealing her transformation into the Clockwork Lady. Oriana then left Piltover to roam Zaun, seeking a fresh purpose. Her father continued to treasure a small statue he'd made of her, symbolizing his grief for a lost daughter. It's a profound, heartbreaking tale of humanity's loss and her sacrifice for her father, fitting for B tier, though her overall effect on the League of Legends universe remains contained. Now we advance to Tier A, a tier for champions boasting deep lore that reveals their motivations, trials, and ties to Runeterra. The first to open this tier is Urgot. A native of Noxus, Urgot was a soldier and executioner, strictly following imperial commands. His fate changed when Swain deceived him and exiled him to Zaun, eliminating Urgot as an obstacle to season power. Once in Zaun, Urgot was caught by chem barons and tormented in a chemical mine. Yet his resilience to pain stunned the mine's overseer, feeding Urgot's resolve. He decided that Zaun's strength lay in suffering. Seizing control of the prison, he unleashed turmoil. By replacing vulnerable body parts with mechanical enhancements, Urgot compelled others into submission. When a Noxian agent sought help, Urgot killed him, identifying Noxus' authority as weakness. He incited a coup, blowing up a chem pipeline and sowing chaos in Zaun. Surviving prisoners escaped into the Sump, where Urgot assembled new disciples. Besides his main lore, Urgot features in a larger story with Caitlyn and Vi. He's a fascinating character, wielding big influence over Zaun's affairs, but the lack of specifics about his Noxian exploits keeps him from scoring higher. Following is Ziggs. Born with a knack for invention, his frenetic, hyperactive disposition alienated him from other Yordle scientists. Determined to attain brilliance like Heimerdinger, Ziggs tirelessly tackled bold projects, celebrating each explosive mishap and unique innovation. His renown reached Piltover's Yordle Academy, where he was invited to display his contraptions. Thanks to his lax safety standards, the demonstration ended in an explosion, tearing down a portion of the Academy's wall. Ziggs was promptly asked to leave. He soon invented a line of explosive bombs and ventured to Zaun to test them, spearheading a prison break for the other Yordles. Moved by his ingenuity, the Academy later honored him with the title Dean of Explosives. You guys might wonder, what is he doing in this tier? His lore seems dull and has little effect on Runeterra. But here is the twist. His shortfall in the official lore is compensated by the comic. It fleshes out his close bond with Jinx and recounts their rowdy escapades in Piltover. Their joint bombings wreak genuine havoc in the city, bringing destruction and panic. While definitely influential, these events remain confined to Piltover and Zaun. And since we've brought up Jinx, let us move on to her. It is worth noting that in the context of game lore, Jinx's story loses much of its depth compared to her character in Arcane. Here, her actions seem less motivated and lack the emotional charge that gives her the deeper inner world we see in the series. Her in-game lore states that Jinx was once an innocent girl from Zaun, but later turned into a daring prankster who wreaks havoc in Piltover. Her mischief started with petty pranks but quickly escalated into reckless heists, explosions, and destruction. The blue-haired girl with explosives and a grenade launcher left graffiti as her calling card, and her most notorious feat was robbing the Eclipse warehouse, ending in a massive explosion. Jinx continues to cause chaos in Piltover and Zaun, oblivious to the harm or casualties she leaves behind. She is periodically pursued by Vi and Caitlyn, who try to apprehend her. Also, an in-game voice line from Ekko indicates that he was once in love with Jinx and knew her as a child, though she appears to have no memory of it.
I had a crush, until you started talking to the gun.
And yes, Jinx is placed in Tier A for same reasons as Ziggs. In their case, the comic storyline did carry the weight. And after these two wildcards, we have the next duo, Vi and Caitlyn, who can essentially be considered one unit. But it's not because they're lovers, no. Well, maybe so, but at some juncture in their lives, their stories intertwine into a single narrative. Vi grew up in the lawless streets of Zaun, where she learned early on to survive by thievery and trickery. Joining a gang at the age of 6, she was an accomplished criminal by the time she turned 11. Her outlook changed after a bungled heist, in which she saved miners using gauntlets constructed from a damaged hacking rig. Ever since, Vi has operated alone, stealing only from criminals and upgrading her gauntlets. Word of her reached Caitlyn, Piltover's sheriff, who offered Vi a job on the side of the law. Vi agreed, delighted at the prospect of knocking criminals around without getting arrested herself. Now they work together, putting fear into anyone who breaks the rules. As for Caitlyn, she was born into a wealthy Piltover family but preferred hunting in the wilderness. After her home was broken into on Progress Day and her parents went missing, Caitlyn used her tracking skills to locate the kidnappers and rescue her family. The incident changed her life. Her mother forsook her clan responsibilities, and Caitlyn honed in on discovering the identity of the mysterious C behind the abduction. Working as a private investigator, Caitlyn made a name for herself and received a custom Hextech rifle from her parents. After delving into a series of child abductions, she was invited to join the Wardens, eventually becoming sheriff, determined to make Piltover safe for all. While A tier, Caitlyn and Vi have additional stories that flesh out their personalities and pursuits, but not to the extent seen in Arcane. They've been partners in law enforcement for a long time, chasing Jinx, Vi's sister and a volatile criminal around Piltover. One of their notable shared adventures is quelling riots triggered by Urgot. Together, they not only suppressed the unrest but also managed to lock Urgot away. Later, they confronted him again when his minions attempted a jailbreak. Despite their prominence and capability, Caitlyn and Vi's influence is confined to Piltover and Zaun. Their overlapping lore spans different timelines and remains somewhat unstructured, keeping them in A tier. And the next champion is no less interesting. Zary was raised in a big, close-knit family of Zaun laborers. Since the times of her childhood, she wielded electrical powers. Her emotions created sparks and surges. Though her distinctive abilities were not always accepted, she resolutely learned to master them. One day, following a mine collapse in the chemtrail veins, Zary saved numerous lives, but a fury at the Baron's disregard for Zaun's safety only intensified. Realizing her potential, she began battling the oppressors by destroying their resources. Initially, Zary fought alone, but she returned home exhausted. Relatives and neighbors backed her, helping craft weapons and gear that converted her emotions into formidable charges. Together, they stood up to the Cambarans. Zary is rightly placed in Tier A. Her lore details a poignant narrative about defending her community and striving for justice. In terms of her connections to other characters, Zary befriended Ekko after she liberated a group of hostages, including his parents, from a warehouse. She also crossed paths with Blitzcrank several times. The golem helped her climb the clock tower, while she rescued him from chempunks on multiple occasions. Moreover, since Zary squares off against Cambarans, she frequently disrupts Rinata Glask, another Cambaran, by sabotaging her ventures in Zaun. This clearly hints at future plots revolving around their rivalry. Nonetheless, for all that, Zary's influence stays local, limited to Zaun, and she is not yet a central player in Runeterra's wider narrative. The most influential individual in this A tier is Rinata Glask. Over the past few decades, she has risen as the wealthiest Cambaran in Zaun, a business mogul who's welded everyone's interests to her own. Hailing from a family of alchemists, Rinata aspired to riches and power. After her parents died tragically in a fire, she founded Glask Industries to build her empire. Through it, she expanded her dominion in Zaun, letting nothing impede her ascent. Eventually, she employed her chemical know-how to secure loyalty by offering work contracts with no clear end date. Rinata soon became the Chem Queen, fearing nobody and showing no inclination to be a public figure. She had another aim altogether, to seize Piltover Zaun gate, because whoever handles trade runs the world. Why A tier? Rinata is tied to multiple League of Legends champions, but mostly in indirect ways. 1. Camille was among the Piltover aristocrats responsible for the death of Rinata's parents. 2. Ekko's parents were conscripted under grueling conditions on Rinata's orders. 3. Rinata funded certain Noxian armories that sold Samira her weapons. And 4. Zary frequently undermines Rinata and foils her projects throughout Zaun. Rinata Glask is extremely influential within Zaun, yet outside that area her reach is minimal. And although she's intriguing, her story isn't yet as fleshed out or substantial as some of the more fully developed characters. However, starting from Tier S, one can see a marked escalation in the depth and intricacy of Champion's lore when compared to the lower tiers. The first to enter this lofty status is Jace, and here's where it gets interesting. His high rank stems from a few vital reasons, and the first, even from the outset, goes like this. His lore stood out for being in-depth, consistent, and strongly interlinked with Victor. Currently, his official story remains the same. Still, it is worth noting that Victor's lore was recently rewritten, giving him an entirely different personality and chronology, disconnecting him from Jace's older storyline. In the new lore, Victor does still feature Jace indirectly. The alterations are inspired by Arcane. Although Jace's official lore on the website has not yet been changed, I'm factoring both his older version and his revised portrayal from the series into his placement here. Chances are Jace's official lore will get its own update soon, given the situation with Victor. In the meantime, I'm keeping him at this tier in my listing. Number 2 in this grouping is Singit. You may wonder what's he doing here, but do not jump to conclusions. While Singit occasionally diverges from his Arcane portrayal, where he did not get much explanation, his in-game lore presents a more fleshed-out personality. In essence, Singit's story is a solid horror piece. But in all seriousness, unlike the deranged Dr. Mundo who kills purely for killing's sake, Singit is a premier chemist and scientist who conducts his experiments with deliberate understanding. A great many test subjects have come under his scalpel, some successfully, like Warwick. And yes, besides that champion, we also know now Singit is related to Oriana, who is his daughter. This grants Singit extra history via Oriana's storyline, though the timeline remains unclear. Overall, Singit's fame spread beyond Piltover Zaun, attracting even Noxian interest. Eventually, a Noxian warlord enlisted him to create an alchemical weapon, alchemical fire that is, later deployed in the Ionian-Noxian War. I believe Singit merits S tier thanks to his unique standing as a scientist and unrelenting chemist capable of affecting entire regions. His chemical and toxic research has made him one of the League's most formidable figures, exerting vast power. His complete self-reliance, ambition, and heedlessness for others' welfare turned him into an agent of chaos and transformation in Zaun and beyond. Singit not only exploits his expertise for personal goals, but also remains a latent threat to all life, making him a singular, terrifying force in Runeterra. And the closing champion of this tier is Camille. She likewise boasts one of the most fascinating and critical backstories in Piltover Zaun. Her family was the first to mine hex crystals from the Brackern in Shurima's treacherous sands, earning them a colossal fortune. Once she took over the Ferris clan, Camille amassed enormous clout in Piltover, orchestrating both the Ferris family's public dealings and clandestine activities like industrial espionage and illicit commerce. Her aptitude for tackling difficult missions and completing them without question renders her one of the city's most lethal power brokers. Camille wields remarkable strength and hacktivist enhancements, preserving her youth while deftly maneuvering events to favor her family. Camille is ranked in the S tier not only because of her incredible influence in Piltover Zaun, but also due to her complex, multi-layered history. Her ability to maneuver both publicly and in the shadows makes her a formidable figure in politics and business. Hextech enhancements, including an artificial heart, grant her physical power and a form of immortality, and her unflinching, calculated way of handling obstacles confirms her status as one of the most dangerous and influential individuals. She does not merely lead a clan, she truly governs vital aspects of life in Piltover, transforming every move into a strategic triumph. Another plus is that Camille has her own comic, which further expands her lore with extra details. And now we've reached the most interesting part, the S+ tier, holding the most captivating stories. And this tier is opened by a champion named Ezreal. Yes, he's not some all-powerful being who can wipe out all of Runeterra like Viego, and he's not the head of a sinister organization like LeBlanc. He's just an ordinary guy, but he's also immensely pivotal in the League of Legends universe. Ezreal is a brilliant and self-assured explorer from Piltover whose thirst for adventure has driven him to discover ancient enigmas and treasures. From his famed archaeologist parents, he inherited not only a knack for exploration but also an insatiable curiosity about the world. A key moment in his story was finding an ancient artifact, a prototype of a magical gauntlet capable of channeling energy. This relic became his hallmark and primary armament throughout countless escapades. During all this time, Ezreal has ventured to the most distant regions of Runeterra, researching cultures, uncovering hidden histories, and investigating extraordinary relics. His journeys are not merely about unearthing more secrets. They are a genuine odyssey across the land, bringing him nearer to solving grand mysteries with each step. And if we talk about his connections with other League of Legends champions, we would run out of time listing them. His tale genuinely deserves its own video, being riddled with surprises, layered plot threads, and truly enthralling lore. It is due to these elements, his contribution to Runeterra's growth and his role in unveiling new knowledge and lore, that Ezreal rightfully secures a spot in the top tier. His travels enrich our view of various regions and deepen our understanding of the broader universe. Ezreal continually introduces new facts, intriguing tidbits, and details that render his journey singular and essential. The second in this line is Ekko. He's a prodigy from Zaun whose ingenuity practically defies time itself. From a young age, he stunned everyone with his knack for building intricate devices out of scrapyard odds and ends. His parents hoped to give him a brighter tomorrow, dreaming that one day he would depart polluted, perilous Zaun for the prosperity of Piltover. But Ekko perceived unique promise in his hometown, where diligence and innovation elevated mere survival into an art form. One day, Ekko happened upon a clunk of hextech crystal amidst the wreckage of an exploded lab. Through experimenting, the budding inventor unearthed the power to manipulate time. He fashioned the Z-Drive, a device letting him rewind events for a few seconds. His first real, so to say, field test came when he rescued a friend fallen from a high ledge by replaying the mishap again and again. These time games subsequently drew Ekko into the orbit of some of Zaun and Piltover's most creative, prominent, and lethal individuals. But to him, nothing surpasses his devotion to friends, family, and the city he calls home. Ekko envisions a future where the self-dubbed City of Progress is overshadowed by a fearlessly innovative Zaun, and Piltover's centuries of refinement sit tame in contrast to Zaunite audacity. Ekko may not have a strict plan, but he's got plenty of time to figure it out. Why the S+ rating? Ekko is voiced with remarkable nuance that beautifully conveys his personality, aims, and drives. One of the most significant parts of his story is when he repeatedly rewinds time to relive his family's birthday gathering. Such scenes lend a strong emotional core to Ekko's story, helping us grasp the depth of his affection for his family. Moreover, Ekko's linked to several other characters in the region. His lines to Jinx hint at memories of a shared childhood, while his exchanges with Zary highlight the solidarity and resilience of Zaun's youth. Beyond the main lore, the biggest reason Ekko ranks here is that he stars in a dedicated game. But that's not all. He even has 2 comics. One is short, while the other, titled the same as his game, comprises several parts. By the way, the second comic, to my surprise, even features Jace and Victor, though Victor is, let us say, still old school in it. But he's there. And while we're on the subject, the next champion is Victor, whose lore has been refreshed by Arcane. He occupies this tier for obvious reasons. Currently, his in-game lore is basically the entire plot of Arcane, showcasing his past, his mindset, his bond with Jace, and the impetus behind his dream of achieving a godlike state. And it follows that in the light of the new lore, the old lore basically becomes obsolete and irrelevant for comparison in this context. If you guys would like to contrast his old and new histories, there's already a video on my channel that does precisely that. Without further delay, let us move on to the last character who tops the charts, so to speak. And that is Mel Medada. Originally, this champion hails from Noxus, yet she spent much of her adulthood in Piltover. So I usually consider her part of both regions simultaneously. Mel is a character who rightly lands in S+ tier, and here's why. In Arcane, her multifaceted, spellbinding backstory fuses personal strife, political intrigue, and profound internal struggles. She belongs to one of Noxus's most influential dynasties, but her path diverges from her family's violent legacy. Mel scorns the brutal methods championed by her kin, opting for diplomacy and intellect. This choice does not merely make her a standout character, it also starkly contrasts with the usual outlook of Noxian society. Her life in Piltover transformed her into one of the most major mover and shaker in the city, where she deftly manipulated the council to advance her projects and spur technological advancement. Still, her tale does not finish there. During the show's second season, we saw an individual arc for Mel that entangled her with the Black Rose, Noxus's secretive power structure. This twist boosted the tension and foreshadowed her part in grander schemes. On top of that, a recent cinematic honoring the new game's season centered on Noxus further cemented Mel's significance. Her presence hints she'll play a huge role in this region's future, potentially the entire universe. All these factors make her storyline not just compelling but also ripe with enormous prospects for growth. Mel is genuinely enthralling due to her depth, influence on the plot, and key ties to future developments. Well, that is how my ranking of Piltover and Zaun champions stands in terms of their lore. If you guys disagree or have personal thoughts on the matter, feel free to leave comments under this video. I'm happy to discuss. I would also greatly appreciate your support for the channel. Subscribe and leave a like. Your involvement motivates me to keep spinning exciting tales and delighting you guys with new videos. Thank you for visiting my tavern. I look forward to having you back for the finest ale in all of Runeterra.